Thanks so much for your time this evening, folks. I know it's makes it a late day, and we really appreciate you hanging around in sort of work mode for us this afternoon. So thanks for allowing me the opportunity to get to talk about the first step in this QI process that Mark introduced last week, which is the plan step. So as we are focusing on the planning stage of QI today, you're going to have the opportunity, hopefully, to learn a couple things. One is how to identify that key problem area in your work. So examples of this could be a treatment model issue, maybe a treatment access problem, or maybe the way staffing is set up. You'll also learn how to assemble a change team, and that will include assigning the roles of executive sponsor and change leader, which we'll talk about. And then you'll also get to learn how to start planning for the actual change you're seeking. For anybody that has been forced to sit into any of my presentations, they will know it's a requirement of my farm animals to make appearance in my slides. It's how they earn their keep on the farm. Sometimes I can find a way to choose pictures that symbolize what I'm talking about in my didactics. However, this was a stretch for QI. So here we have my farm animal, our supervising dog, Nellie, who's leaping her way into QI. So it's just going to get worse from here, I'll warn you. Okay, so just a recap from last week. I'm going to say last week, I mean 2 weeks ago, but last session. So if you remember, Mark talked with us about what quality improvement is and what it isn't. He talked about why it's important, especially in the healthcare system, and then how do we apply quality improvement specifically to our substance use disorder programs and specific services. So as we talked about last week, we're engaging in this bigger quality improvement project because we want to be able to improve our services. And if there's an area that we want to improve, it's most likely because there's currently a problem with how it's running or how it's working. And so the first kind of basic step, what we want to do is identify that key problem. To be fair, though, that is easier said than done. If I go to leave my office and I walk up and down this back hallway here, I'm going to run into anywhere from 5 to 10 staff that I work with. And if I ask them about what they see as problem areas in our department, I'm going to get several different examples. So the question is, how do we sort of narrow down our focus, our view to one specific key problem? And in doing that, we want to make sure that we can clearly define our goal in addressing this problem. And we want to also pick one that's somewhat easy to measure. We want to be able to measure the outcome. And so in doing that, we want to think about a goal that addresses maybe a current gap in the services we're providing. We want to think about a goal that has a higher likelihood of success. A goal that will most likely have the backing of our leadership team. Mark talked about that at the last session. He talked about the importance of that buy-in. If we have buy-in from leadership and we have buy-in from everybody in the team, that's going to potentially help to make that intervention happen more consistently. And then we also want to be able to pick one that fits our organization's current priorities. By the way, as you can see here, the key problem that we have on our farm is keeping our rooster. His name's No Comb. We need to keep him out of the garden and specifically out of the blueberry bush. Our QI project is not going well at home. I'll ask to reach out to my team here. Would any of you like to talk about what's the project on our end that we came to? What was the sort of key problem area that we identified, and what was the project we went with?
I'll pipe in. This is Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
The key problem that we were focusing on was retention, specifically new patient retention in the first 30 days of treatment. Historically, the Coke Clinic had tracked retention, I believe, at the 90-day mark. And so the theory was we can't get to 90 days if we first don't get to 30 days. So we wanted to key in on that first month of retention of our patients. And you'll learn about the intro to the planning the change toward Katie's end of her presentation today. But our change team did a whole process of coming up with interventions that we thought might work, and kind of combined a few of them into the ultimate intervention, the first one that we've tweaked along the way, which you also learn, you continually do in QI, but it was to create a separate orientation group that provided more education, more grace in applying the policies to allow new patients to have more time to understand what the program was, and help them coordinate the ability to be able to stay in treatment through aligning things like transportation and technology, and meeting educational goals about the COPE program.
Thank you, Tony. Fantastic description of what we sort of came up with on our end. Thanks so much. So in the process of identifying that key problem, we then want to assemble our change team. So your change team is the collection of staff that have the time, and then also more specifically have the motivation to participate in QI. We find that when folks have the motivation to do it, they will find a way to have the time to do it. One vital leadership role within the change team is the executive sponsor. So this is going to be the person that essentially endorses your project. There'll be somebody within your organization that has the authority to remove potential barriers for your team. Somebody like a department chair, or maybe a medical director, or a CEO, or some type of manager in that role. I'll ask you all, so folks on my team, and then folks that are sort of just learning about that, what do you think are some characteristics that would make up a good executive sponsor? And Mark talked a little bit about this last time.
I'll just share that, and this is not QI, but before I came to work clinically full-time with the team here at WVU Medicine, I worked at WVU School of Nursing, Associate Dean of Practice there. And, I applied and got a lot of grant work for the practicing faculty. And I always selected my Dean Tara Halsey, to be on the grant team because she had power and authority. If Katie mentioned barrier removal, it's always nice to have someone that they don't have to be on the day-to-day project, but if you need something taken care of quickly and easily, having someone with the authority to do that is great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. A perfect example, Tony. Somebody who's going to be able to make some changes happen that can support your project. So great suggestion. What else? Other thoughts of what would make up a good executive sponsor, a good leader?
Somebody that others look up to. Like
yes.
If they're not gonna, like if someone else on the team or your like clinical team doesn't look up to this person, they're not going to listen to them.
100%, Sheena, right? So somebody who's earned the respect of the team, right? For somebody that they're going to, if that person is leading the charge with this, chances are other people are going to want to follow their lead because they respect the work they do and why they're asking them to do this extra QI work to begin with. So great example. Megan, I saw you unmute yourself. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think someone who's very good about checking in and getting feedback, someone who's like receptive to feedback, and that is very, very important, especially since that's basically what you're going to be doing for the next however long you are on the project, is always getting feedback.
Absolutely, right? Creating that two-way communication. You can go to them and they're gonna feel comfortable coming to you with kind of sharing their feedback. Yeah, all great suggestions. You got, and all, one more additional thing I would add to that is potentially somebody that's not going to micromanage, right? The executive sponsor is kind of meant to be a little bit in the background. They're there to provide support, but you're not going to want somebody who's then is going to be involved with every little detail and again, kind of micromanaging your decision. I'll use Billy the goat here as our example. Billy is our farm's executive sponsor. She hangs out in the background. She's at home base, our main barn. She's supervising the work. She's offering support when needed, but she's not up in everybody's grill right now. I told you it was going to be a stretch to try and figure out how to get these pictures. Connect to QI. Okay, so we talked about the executive sponsor. Again, there's somebody in the background. We want to talk about our change leader. The change leader is the leader that's up front. They're guiding the change team all throughout the QI project. They're helping to keep the team engaged. They're facilitating these plan, do, study, act steps. They're also meeting with the executive sponsor from time to time, and they're providing them with study updates and maybe potentially getting some feedback to bring back to the team. And when you think about a change leader, really in addition to what we just heard about the executive sponsor, some of those characteristics can be similar. We want somebody who is competent and well respected by their team, and somebody that we can trust to be present all throughout the project. There are some potential great leaders, but if they're not in your program or agency often, if they're traveling all the time, if they're not going to be able to regularly be in touch with the team, that could, potentially be a downfall. So same question I'll throw back out again to the folks that are attending this presentation, and then folks on my team. What characteristics do you think make up a good change leader?
Passionate and competent.
Yes, passionate and competent. Absolutely. Somebody that's both competent about QI and passionate about the work.
I'd say probably persistent as well, trying to make sure that everyone stays on track.
Yes.
Difficult.
Bridget, you just highlighted a fantastic aspects of part of our team. We've been doing our QI project for a while, and we were doing it during a pandemic. So if you can imagine, we got distracted from time to time. And thankfully, the leadership of our team was able to go, hey guys, we got to kind of get back to the road that we were on with I know you guys know this, working in this healthcare field, there's so many other red herrings we could pay attention to, but so somebody that's going to be persistent and helping keep your team on track. Excellent suggestion. Other thoughts?
They got to be a good communicator, both up to the sponsor and then also to the rest of the team.
Yes, and good communication means being clear and transparent in your communication, being, respectful and compassionate and also assertive at the same time. So great communication, absolutely. I think also somebody who's knowledgeable both about the organization and the process, knowledgeable about treatment and the population, and at the same time knowledgeable about QI can be really helpful. Any other suggestions from your group? So here is, this is Spork, stands for small pork. Spork is the change leader on our farm. So he lives in a pasture with various goats, chickens, and then also another pig. So he manages to somehow get along literally with all of them, and they actually see him as somewhat of a protector. I think these little tusks here probably help with that. But so you can see he's at the forefront, right? And his executive sponsor is kind of hanging out in the background. She's there if he needs them, but he's leading the charge. And so we've got our executive sponsor, we've got our change leader. Now we want to talk about the change team. So the remainder of your change team should consist of, we say roughly 3 to 7 other staff members or stakeholders. That number I know can change based on, frankly, how big your agency is to begin with. But those are sort of the recommended numbers. Most importantly, what you want to do is pick staff that can commit themselves to the project. So together, this is going to be the team that's going to brainstorm the possible changes to implement as the project is progressing. Tony mentioned that earlier, QI is not about you just sort of pick one intervention at the beginning and then that's it. You're meeting together regularly to decide if it's working, if there's tweaks, changes that need to be made throughout. So they're facilitating these plan, do, study, act cycles or one cycle or maybe multiple cycles. And then ultimately they'll decide when that project aim has been achieved and then therefore completed. And so within that team, you do want to identify a data coordinator. They're going to be monitoring the data collection process and hopefully organizing it in a way that feels efficient to them. And then along the way, the change team should really be sharing their story within their larger work team or organization. We really want to emphasize the positive impact that QI project has, and the hopes that that's going to encourage continued, buy-in from leadership, and maybe have this one QI project turn into future QI projects. So again, I'll throw it out to you, both folks on my team, but also the folks that are a part of this project. So what characteristics do you all think would make up a good change team?
I think people who have a historic background of why a process is the way it is always helpful, so that we know, what was going on and why it worked then and why it may not work now.
Yes, Bridget, such a good point. So Tony talked about our retention project, specifically in our MAT program, our COAT program. And what's been helpful is there have been folks on the team who have been a part of COAT for the last 5-10 years. And so we have seen the evolution of the of what that program has looked like. So we've been able to talk about what worked and didn't work and why did we make the changes that we made. So that's really helpful. Good point. Who else? What else? How about Tommy or Emily or Natasha?
Probably consistency.
Yes, absolutely. Consistency, right? The folks that are going to be there are going to be able to be a part of the project on a regular basis. People that offer consistent teamwork and reliable teamwork. Great suggestion. Emily or Tommy, anything additional you would add to that?
I mean, I think you can throw communication again. I hate to say the same word that somebody else used in a different form, but communication is just so important. So coming from different perspectives and backgrounds, understanding your team and what you bring to the table and offer. Everybody has something they bring to the table. So being able to communicate what you're good at and being humble enough to say, okay, maybe I'm not so great here, but here is where I'm great. And that's what makes the ultimate team. So communicating what your strengths and weaknesses are clearly, and being able to accept each other and, the process of whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Tommy, absolutely. You should bring up communication here. Sure, it was said before, but it's a great point that is highlighted for each part of this team, is that we need to have clear communication, transparent communication, and respectful communication. If I think about a team, that's what I'm thinking of, is you've got various members coming from different backgrounds, but they respect each other. They're going to get along, they care about this mission, and they're doing that together. So all great points. Well, here's our change team on the farm. As you can see, they're representing various members of the agency. We don't just have all pigs in there or all goats. You've got pigs, you've got goats, you've got chickens, you got little baby chicks in there. So folks from various members of the, if I'm thinking of QI, if we just had our prescribers here on a team, or just the therapists, or just the case managers, you'd really miss out on some vital opinions from the other aspects of the team. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Tom. So we've talked about how to identify that key problem. We've talked about how to put the change team together. We've talked about how to pick those key areas of leadership for the team. It's now time to meet and start that process, and you'll do that with this kickoff meeting. So at this kickoff meeting, you'll want to review what's the project aim, and you'll start that walkthrough process. I believe the next, is it Tony or Olivia that's presenting next? It's Tony. Tony's raising the hand raised. I think she is maybe talking about she's got the do step. So she's talking about the do process, what that looks like to actually come together and do some of this work. So you're going to discuss in this kickoff meeting, you'll discuss what strengths your team and your agency is bringing to the project aim. You'll talk about any maybe improvement opportunities that you recognize ahead of time. Tommy said it well earlier, sort of talking about what are your strengths and what are your maybe vulnerabilities. And so identifying those early on can be really a helpful part of this process too. Before we head out into our breakout rooms, any questions? Anything that sort of stood out to you that you want to make sure that your breakout team is helping address with you? As Jay mentioned, I think the goal in these breakout rooms is what we want to do is help your individual teams. Maybe you have already done this, you've already identified what your specific problem is that you want to work on, or maybe you haven't done that yet. And so we can talk about what's the process for that and start thinking about who is on your change team, and then help kind of prep for the next session. I see no questions.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we'll get ready to get into the breakout room. So thank you, Katie, really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, we're going to get in the breakout rooms. We're going to kind of have, discussion around the kind of building your change team, identifying the problem, those kind of initial steps within your organizations. And we really want you guys to lead the discussions. So when I say you guys, I mean Tommy and Natasha and Bridget and Emily, really kind of, you can ask us questions who are within your group that aren't associated with Cabin Creek or New River to kind of maybe get things going, but also try to think about, what you've done in the past, what you need to change maybe that, didn't work last time, anything is fair game. But we want to have, good discussion so you feel like you come away kind of a little bit prepared if you're ready to develop your change team or feeling better about identifying your problem. That's the goal. We'll do it for about 15 minutes. So I'll put you into your breakout rooms. I'll let you know if anything comes up through the messaging and all that kind of stuff, but I'll send you guys a reminder when we're about to pull everybody back. We'll have a brief recap, go over kind of next steps for the next session, and be on our way.